certain things that the Prime Minister can do short term about some of those issues. But longer term, he wants to, I think, give people hope, and that's why he's coming back to wages, suggesting repeatedly throughout this week here at Tory conference that wages are going up and that they will continue to. Now, of course, we know that the comparisons, as the point you made yourself, Dan, earlier on with him, the comparisons aren't entirely valid because this time last year, many people were on furlough, earning 80% of their salaries, and some of those who lost their jobs were the lowest paid, so thereby pushing up average wages. So the comparison a year on, the suggestion that wages are actually higher than they were a year ago, yes, it's probably technically true, but when you take those factors into account, it's not what actually many people are feeling at the moment when they're paying their bills and where they're looking at their bank account every month. So the pressure's only going to increase.
How strong a position do you think the Prime Minister is in at the moment? Can he take this criticism? Does it knock him off his stride, or is he in such a powerful position with a majority in Parliament that it doesn't really matter to him?
Well, I think what's interesting at B.
And that patience will be tested by those supply chain issues which we talked about as well. I mean, he admitted that of the 5,000 HGV drivers they require, they say they need, is only 127 have signed up for this emergency visa. When I asked him repeatedly whether he was worried about those supply chain issues in the build-up to Christmas, he didn't answer that. But that is a huge concern, not only for him, but for those of us who are, all of us who are going to be trying to buy food these next few months.
Well, I mean, it's happening now, already, isn't it? I popped over for a cup of tea in a high street coffee place the other day, and they couldn't provide one because there wasn't any milk because the lorry drivers weren't delivering it. So, and you go to your supermarkets and there are empty shelves. And I know that the Prime Minister is very keen for us to believe that that's not the case, but we all see it in our everyday lives, and it will continue unless they can address some of the problems with deliveries and HGV drivers. As you rightly say, the numbers are very small. I think it was 127, he said, of those 5,000 visas that they'd issued. And the industry says that they need about 100,000 visas for people to come here. Of course, it's broader than just, there are, as he rightly said, there are issues obviously in parts of Europe as well with getting drivers, but it's about conditions and it's about pay and it's about all sorts of other things. But our geographical isolation as compared to the rest of the continent, and the fact that the rest of the EU can recruit drivers from other countries more easily than we can, does make it particularly tricky for us. But that's not going to be much comfort for people as you get into the run-up to Christmas. He's repeatedly said, as he said to you, Dan, that this Christmas is going to be better than last. Well, that's not really a very high bar, is it? Given how we all felt last Christmas. So it is a problem for them. I think, as Camilla rightly says, though, that it is sort of mid-term, and they're hopeful that they'll be able to sort of get things back on track before the next election. Let's see. I strongly suspect they'll go into the next election saying we were knocked off course in all our promises and pledges that we were elected on with this big majority in 2019, so by the pandemic. So we need more time, and it's going to be like, give us 4 more years or give us 5 more years. We're only halfway there. Let us finish the job. And I think if they can, what they'll be trying to do is keep people on board long enough to be able to win that argument convincingly going into the next election.
One of the other big topics we talked about was, I suppose, violence against women in the wake of the Sarah Everard case. I'm very aware that we were 2 men talking about this issue together. It's great to have you 2 here. Do you share some of those concerns that many women have? And what did you think of what he said about, his basic point was, there are existing laws, we've got to use them rather than make misogyny a hate crime? Well,
I've written about this for The Telegraph. There is this sense that sort of 20 years...
I think there's a feeling that now, if you look at the Sarah Everard case and the sort of the pattern of behaviour that eventually resulted in her murder, there was some what would be regarded more broadly as like low-level incidents when it comes to sort of sexual and violent crime on behalf of the perpetrator, who I'm not going to name. And I think the feeling is that I certainly feel that if you make it clear to people, to perpetrators, that low-level crime, that whether it's catcalling or whether it's flashing or whether it's harassment or touching or whatever it is not acceptable, which is not happening at the moment, then possibly you prevent it escalating onto something more serious. And that's not happening at the moment. So, it's all very well saying the laws are there, follow them, but that doesn't happen. So actually maybe you need to make the law a bit tougher.
Maybe they need to take the gloves off, I don't know.
I do also wonder how much really people pay attention out there when they're queuing for the petrol or buying their shopping to what's going on in this hall. And we have interviews like the one you've done this morning, and that's probably the most people will see from party conference this week. We all obsess about it. We're all fascinated in the sort of the machinations that are going on behind the scenes. But when it comes to what actually penetrates, policy bombs, as you put it, probably do, but the government doesn't have any money. There's a spending review and budget coming up, and they're going to want to probably hold some of their powder dry, keep some of their powder dry for that. So I'm not really very hopeful that we're going to see much beyond more of the rhetoric and the boosterism from the Prime Minister tomorrow.
I'm sure you'll both be following it very closely. Thank you for running us through this morning what the Prime Minister had to say and some of those wider issues as well. Pippa, Camilla, always a pleasure. Thank you. I hope you've enjoyed your time on the sofa as well.
Oh, love the time on the sofa.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Right, we're going to find